This is what we call the Hunter method and the functional method. And what we're trying to move away from ultimately is here. This physiology, so we got unbalanced hormones, and everything that I've spoken about in the previous two videos really dove into the steps you need to take to move away from that. And this one is, I think, a keystone, right? And it's going to really back on to the final video I'll do in the series, because who wants to put up with this shit, right? Anxiety, depression, poor libido, fatigue, poor concentration and memory. And then all these physical issues here, increased body fat. So a lot of people, unfortunately, they've got no clue they can fix this. It's not a magic pill, but if you do things right and follow these steps, you're going to be feeling a lot better. So what we've talked about in the first video is these advanced glycation and lip oxidization end products and foods and how to get your labs checked. So I've given you a PDF to download for that. The second video was all about the omega index significantly lowering inflammation, increasing telomeres, which is walking back biological aging. And it's also going to help you increase muscle protein synthesis along with fat loss. So pretty helpful video that one was. And again, as I mentioned, the Hunter method, and we'll talk about nutrient status, and the functional method and gut health. So because we're trying to move away from that, we just have to understand that these scientists, my friends, they've, as I talked about in the first video, these AGEs are causative in many degenerative diseases. So we're talking about brain issues like Alzheimer's, memory loss, cognitive decline. Then we're talking about heart disease, type 1, type 2 diabetes, and insulin resistance, prediabetes, chronic kidney disease, wrinkles, and loss of skin elasticity, and infertility, and a whole host of other things. So we can actually walk back wrinkles and biological aging. So the first two videos showed you the causes. So that video should be linked below. And there's a lot of inhibitors for this as well. And we spoke about that, like to walk back biological aging, which you can test for. We need to elongate back here these telomeres through triggering an enzyme called telomerase. So we want to move away from these short ones, which is accelerated aging, to elongating through telomerase these telomeres. And I gave you some strategies in the previous video about how to do that. Now let's talk about gut health, because it is absolutely foundational. So when I was working with functional doctors, clinical nutritionists, and I did my certificate in nutrition, I learned all about the gut. Now, I just want to walk you through how it's the foundation. And so many people, unfortunately, they have a sick gut. And this is the consequences of that. And this is also going to drive up inflammation and these advanced glycation and lip oxidization end products as well. So look at the brain here. We're talking about, so when your gut is screwed up, stress, anxiety, depression, IBS, schizophrenia, cognitive decline, autism, brain fog, even autism, my friends. And then the endocrine axis. So your hormones are unbalanced straight from the get-go. And these AGEs destroy your gut, as I mentioned in the first two videos there. And then the heart. So cardiovascular disease, right, stems from the heart, along with thrombosis, which is thick, sludgy blood, hypertension, which is high blood pressure. And then your lungs, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease like asthma, rhinitis. So we really want to fix up the gut, and I'll show you how to do that in this video today. Then the liver. So the liver does a lot of detoxing chemicals, and it also keeps estrogen at healthy levels. So we've got to have a very high functioning liver. And then the pancreas. So type 1, type 2 diabetes, along with insulin resistance and prediabetes. And then the gut bone axis, so demineralizing the bone, causing osteoporosis. And then the muscle, so the gut muscle axis. So a lot of dudes out there, they're lifting the weights. They think they're doing everything right. They think they're eating the right foods. They're trying to sleep, get the sun, get the stress under control. But if they're gut sick, it's very difficult to put on the muscle mass there. But if we put this off, we get to 50, 60, sarcopenia sets in and we become frail and we'd be hobbling along with all of these bloody walkers, and, it's not fun, is it? And then look how it ties into accelerated skin aging. So acne, cirrhosis, atopic dermatitis, wrinkles, and advanced skin aging. So the gut is really foundational. And the testes for men and ovaries for women. So it completely shortchanges your fertility and your testosterone. Sit with that for a moment. This is huge. And then the kidney and bladder axis. You've also got a thyroid axis too. So let's just zoom in very quickly to the gut testy axis. So when you've got gut dysbiosis, and a lot of people do, you've got DNA damage, you've got impaired spermogenesis, you've got low testosterone. So we want to move away from dysbiosis to symbiosis. And again, I'll talk about how to do that towards the end. But one thing that's really important for testosterone production and good blood pressure and blood flow to your organs like your brain is nitric oxide. So guess what can screw up your nitric oxide? Well, I've got a video here, and it's linked below too, so you can check out the full video. But it's all about something that you're probably doing. And if you're doing this, you might want to consider not doing this. So listen carefully to this.
Absolutely. So here's what happens, and the advertisements are correct. It kills 99.99% of the bacteria when you use it.
And that's the problem.
That's the problem. I mean, the bacteria that live in and on the human body outnumber on human cells 10 to 1, right? So this is an entire ecology. We call this symbiosis. These bacteria providing metabolic benefits to the human host that we can't do. One of those is production of nitric oxide. So when you eradicate these bacteria, there's an entire ecology from the mouth all the way down to the anus, right? And it's the microbiome. A lot of people focused on the gut microbiome. Years ago, we focused on the oral microbiome. And what we found was that the more diverse the microbiome, the better cardiovascular health and the better blood pressure management. So when you eradicate this with mouthwash, we saw, I think the first paper was in maybe 2009, 2010. You take normal intensive patients, you just put them on mouthwash twice a day for 7 days, you see an increase in blood pressure.
Damn.
Now, this drove kind of cardiologists and vascular biologists crazy because they thought we thought we had a pretty good understanding of vascular biology and maintenance of systemic blood pressure. So how, by killing oral bacteria, we're affecting systemic blood pressure and vascular tone? And then we figured out, well, it's through the production of nitric oxide. So yeah, alcohol-based mouthwash does this. The chlorhexidine prescription mouthwash is very effective at killing it. The good news is, and we published this in 2019, if you use mouthwash, we certainly see an increase in blood pressure. And I think in 2020, I was on the doctor show. We came in and we revealed that if you use mouthwash, you actually lose the protective benefits of exercise. So think about this. If you're trying to do all the right things, you're eating a good balanced diet, you're getting exercise, but if you're using mouthwash, you lose the entire cardiovascular benefits of everything you're doing. The good news is 4 days after we stop using it, blood pressure normalizes, the bacteria completely repopulate. So this is a resilient community.
So you think you're doing everything right and you're just throwing one thing. See, everything that I put in my body and on my body, I research to make sure it's not going to have a deleterious effect. So you got to really understand that these things that we're told that are good for us, maybe we need to rethink what mainstream are profiting off us. It's shortchanging our health. And when you lose your health, what are you left with? So be careful of the old mouthwash there. Now, one thing that I just want to talk about is something that also can destroy your gut. Now, I'll talk about genetics in a few slides from here, but what I want you to take home is that not everybody can eat the same foods. Some people can eat a lot of these things called lectins and nightshades, and some people can't. We're all uniquely different. And that's the point. What works for one person most certainly mightn't work for you. And I'm no exception. I'll talk about my genes. I'll actually show you what I'm eating somewhere in this. So stick around for that. But suffice to say that the medical system, they mean really well, ostensibly, but functional medicine really want to help you. They get at the root cause of all disease. And I'll talk about that when I get to the functional method somewhere in this video. But the thing that I've learned from these amazing functional doctors is that here's the thing, your bloating, your constipation and stomach pain are early signs of autoimmune disease progressing. And one example of this is Parkinson's disease. So this takes decades to show up. And when you get Parkinson's disease, 9 times out of 10, it's too late. You're shit out of luck. And guess what can drive that? I'll play this video from my good friend Dr. J. And this is just about one food item that some people can have, but we've tested hundreds and hundreds of people, and a full 65% are sensitive to this one in particular. Pay careful attention to this, my friends.
The lectin is the big one. That's a 4-fold higher risk of heart disease, even as a plus minus, the SELE.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So lectins are going to trigger a lot of damage to the arteries and damage to the gut. I would recommend avoiding grains.
Yeah.
You know, grains are the major source of lectins.
Yeah.
And his gut's very sensitive to grains also, with the gluten. And he's got a thyroid gene that comes up later with gluten as well. So I would say just take off the grains, you know.
Attacking the gut, the vasculature system, and the thyroid. So when that's being attacked, you know, you're going to come down. But the unfortunate truth is it could be too far gone for you to repair the thyroid. And it also attacks the brain, as you'll soon learn. But we've also got things like nightshades, oxalates, plant sterols. There's a whole host of things that can really screw up your gut. And it's attacking your gut, your pancreas, your brain, causing ataxia. So we're gonna figure this out as we progress. Now, one of the big ones that I'm sensitive to is nightshades. And this is a recent publication about a year ago, May 19, 2023. And nightshades, and we've tested again hundreds and hundreds of people, and about 25% are sensitive to nightshades. This could be you. And like, I had no clue, and I was eating these nightshades for a good amount of time, but they destroy your gut, and that's the point. And also lectin-derived ones. So they're going to push up IgE and mast cell activation, push up histamine, proteases. And when histamine goes up, dopamine comes down, and you feel like shit. You got no motivation, you got no energy, you got no get up and go, and you just think you're getting older. You're not getting older. The foods that you eat profoundly affect how you show up in the world, my friends. So if you want to show up in your prime and have a lot of energy and vitality, we've really got to rethink about what we're putting in our bodies. As I've said, everything I put in and on my body, it's tested to make sure that I can handle it, and it's going to elicit a positive effect in my physiology. So let's quickly talk about genes a little bit. So all genes are is that, very simply, they make proteins. And this is a functional protein here. So your genes, basically, mRNA comes out, makes genes in the ribosome there, makes proteins in the ribosome. Now, here's the interesting thing. Everybody has these things. They're called single nucleotide polymorphisms. They're called SNPs. Now, if you've got a SNP, and here's one here, and a genotype on this SNP here, see here, it's just got this protein is a little bit altered, so it doesn't look the same as that one up there. And what does that mean? It doesn't work as efficiently. Now, this one in particular is all about a compound called ergothioneine. Now, if you've got this gene here and it's a TT allele, so you're homozygous, you have a 2-fold increased risk of Crohn disease. And the medical system say it's idiopathic. We don't know how it happens. Right here, this one gene alone. So you can't eat a lot of foods that contain ergothioneine. So what foods contain ergothioneine in large quantities? Mushrooms. So check this next slide out, my friends. So here it is. So what they found is that if you supplement things like lion's mane that's got lots of ergothioneine in it, or eat mushrooms, they found that the ergothioneine levels in plasma and whole blood are significantly elevated. Interestingly, continue to increase in whole blood up to 4 weeks after administration ceased. Okay, so this is really deleterious to these people. And look what happens. You've got chronic kidney disease, preeclampsia, myocardial infarction, pressure overload, liver fibrosis, fatty liver disease, inflammation, reactive oxygen species, and tissue damage, and it's stored in your tissues. So as you can see there, like, we're all uniquely different. And we've tested a lot of people, and probably 10% have this issue. So it's not nothing. It's certainly something. And this could be you. And a lot of the people that we did test with this gene, they ate mushrooms. And they come to us because they're just not feeling optimal. So I'm like a detective. I want to find out why you're tapping out. So we look at all of these genes to make sure everything that you put in your body is going to help you, not harm you, and help you recover and rejuvenate tissues and organs. All right, so that's just the genetic component of it. So the whole point I'm trying to illustrate here is that we're all uniquely different, and the system says, eat this diet, that diet, you're good. And they'll also tell you to eat a Mediterranean diet. Now, that ostensibly is a very healthy diet, but it's packed full of lectins and nightshades. So if you're sensitive to lectins and nightshades, maybe it's not optimal for you. So that's why we test everything. Now let's talk about big food, because it's a big problem, as you learned in the first two videos. So unfortunately, they've got pure endocrine disruptors in them, like chemicals, preservative, additives, and they've also packed with AGEs. So you're getting a healthy dose of AGEs, healthy dose of ALEs, lip oxidation end products, a healthy dose of chemicals, and it's deleterious to functioning in your body. And as we spoke about on the very first video there, these AGEs, they can cause atherosclerosis, lipid peroxidization. They can cause arthritis and skeletal muscle issues, pulmonary disorders, asthma, allergies, wheezing, and endocrine disorders, right? They are disrupting your hormones. As I mentioned this, your testosterone plummets, your thyroid's out of whack. Estrogen goes up though, so that's that's good, ostensibly. So you can see what's going on here, but the insidious thing is they shorten your telomeres. So you've got accelerated aging. And the final thing here is they cause 50 times more free radicals. So big food, big pharma, big ag, they're cashing in off our poor health. And that's the point. Now, one thing that really grinds my gears is that when you do get sick, you put on medications. Now, there's two bad things about these medications. And I believe in my heart that if you use the functional method, you can actually work out where the issues are and eventually get off these big pharma drugs. That is my hope for you. Like I was on them. I was on big pharma drugs and I got off everyone, all of them. Hypertension medication, anxiety medication, arthritis medication, asthma medication, off all of them now. And that's my hope for you. So I had a couple of videos here to play for you, but basically when you've got a sick gut, it leads to really deleterious effects mentally, right? And the more you have anxiety and depression, your brain literally rewires to become that person. So when you've got a sick gut, it leads to anxiety and depression-like behavior, comorbidities, neuroinflammation. So you got brain fog and you just can't think properly. You got memory issues, psychological stress, as I mentioned there, depression, colitis. And remember, mainstream medicine say it's idiopathic, but they don't really know what causes it. Functional medicine calls bullshit. We know. We just have to figure out what it is specifically for you. And it also activates the HPA axis. So cortisol goes up and then inflammation goes up. So you can see how this is very deleterious for everything in your life, every area of your life, the fat loss, the muscle growth, your earning potential, showing up as the best strong person that you are. So this is what Dr. Ken Berry said to me about these drugs, the Big Pharma brand.
That was me. Yeah.
2 million views or something, because having man boobs is so common in the world today that there are over 2 million men who've watched my video on YouTube about it, if not 3. All those things are symptoms of low testosterone. And there's a long list of prescription medications that you might be taking from your doctor, your doctor that you trust, that could actually be plummeting your testosterone levels. I've got a YouTube.
Right. So problem number one is that they tank your testosterone levels. And guess what testosterone does? Well, free testosterone, when it's up consistently, it lowers fear and anxiety and depression, right? It motivates you to get out the door and become the best man that you were born to be. Now, this is what a lot of the functional doctors say, and this is what Dr. J said to me. Pay careful attention to this, my friends.
That at bay to protect against future problems there. Testosterone.
How does testosterone do that?
It shuts off interleukins. And interleukins, kind of like CRP, it's a form of inflammation.
Right. Okay.
And there's 24 of them. There's IL-1, there's IL-2, there's IL-3, all the way to 24. And some of them are in your knees, and some are in your elbows, and some are in your discs in your back, and some are in your brain.
Yeah.
And so like this particular one, IL-1 alpha, it's called interleukin-1 alpha. It's in your discs in your low back.
Yep.
And it can get out of hand and just cause specific low back disc degeneration and disc pain, and bulging discs and all this kind of stuff if you have inflammation there all the time, and testosterone shuts it off.
So I guess testosterone would be a very powerful lever to pull down on to get rid of inflammation when it's up at the right level.
Exactly. Yeah. In general, especially in the low back. That's why the drug companies hate it, right? Because if you have nice high testosterone, it's going to heal a lot of chronic issues that they're prescribing drugs for, like arthritis and gut issues, like IBS. They have all these drugs for irritable bowel syndrome.
Yeah.
It's just like on and on.
Testosterone is like a magic trick to bring down inflammation all over the body.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what do you think about that? Sit with that for a moment and drop a comment below. What are your thoughts on that? It's a pretty big issue. Now, the second issue is that these big pharma drugs, they're packed full of emulsifiers. And I'm going to come back to that here in a moment. But before we do, I just want to play one more video. And this is from Dr. Daddis. Now, he is a functional doctor. He's written a lot of books all about these topics. So listen carefully to this.
So inflammation in the gut activates gut immune cells. Those gut immune cells send messenger proteins to cells in the brain called neuroglia. Those neuroglia get activated, and then the brain gets inflamed. And when the brain gets inflamed, nerve conduction, synapses slow down. Inflammation in the brain slows down synapses, and patients just can't think, they can't focus, they can't get their thought process going on. So those are the things that happen with it. So basically, some people that have immune reactions to gluten, they get severe brain inflammation. When they eat it, they can even have their blood-brain barrier, gut barrier breakdown. They can set up the stage for neurological autoimmunity. They can decrease blood flow to their brain. As their brain gets inflamed, their messenger synaptic pathways become slower, and they just don't function well. And they walk in the healthcare system, and they get diagnosed with chronic depressive disorder or chronic anxiety disorder.
So you get a sick gut from eating this crappy food, and then you get depression and anxiety. Then you walk into the healthcare system and they prescribe you drugs. Those drugs, number one, lower testosterone, and they've got these emulsifiers in it like polysorbate 80, right? This is what Big Pharma puts in there. And look what these drugs do. Polysorbate 80. They destroy your gut. So you can see how their business model works really well. They keep you sick and they keep you hooked on these drugs. All right. So that's my experience with the food, pharma, and big ag, right? They're just not helpful. They just keep us sick and suboptimal. We lose our edge. We get out of our prime. We've got accelerated aging. We feel like lazy losers. So what we're going to do now is talk about optimal nutrient status. Now, the way you want to think through this is if you don't have enough vitamins and minerals, this is another reason why your hormones are out of whack. So think about your hormones as like a band playing. The singer, the drummer, the guitarist, and they just don't sound very good. And that's the way that we feel. So all of your hormones are out of balance. They're out of tune. So we have to start thinking about optimal nutrient status. So I will show you exactly what I'm doing to solve this problem. But for a lot of people, unfortunately, like vitamin D here, big issue, 95.4% from the NHANES data shows that we just don't have optimal levels. And that's a big problem. Now, one thing that I've spoken about in previous videos there is homocysteine. And remember, if they even do check your homocysteine, which is very rare, they'll say 14.5 is okay when it's really not. We want to get it much lower than that because all of this shows up in our life. And a lot of this is driven by, lifestyle, but more than likely it's nutrient lack in your body there. So you've got the cardiovascular disease, heart attack and stroke, epilepsy, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, cognitive decline. It's an absolute mess when this happens. So one way that you can absolutely figure this out is understanding methylation. So you've probably heard about methylation before, and this looks kind of complicated. It is, but you don't need to know any of this. What this is to illustrate, if you've got a nutrient lack, vitamins or minerals, this whole cascade that whole metabolism slows down and homocysteine will build up. And just one example of this, if you don't have enough magnesium or potassium, it bottlenecks there and it slows it all down and homocysteine builds up. So magnesium and potassium is super important, but you've also got things like serine, iron, B6, and then you've got all of these things like zinc, methylfolate, things like that. But you can easily solve this problem. So just think about the nutrient lack, that your homocysteine will go up. And if you don't pay attention to this, this is what happens over a lifetime load of homocysteine. So as I mentioned there, she's got some deleterious effects, but the plaque in the arteries builds up, you get lesions, your nitric oxide comes down, your testosterone goes to shit. And we've tested hundreds and hundreds of people, and they're basically in this category right there. They're never really optimal. Very few people are optimal. And if you want to go super deep with this, you can do what's called a methylation panel through a blood lab. And right here, you can start to understand how to solve this problem. But you don't necessarily need to do this panel. But as you can see here, this one right here, you got your glutathione, it's suboptimal. Your homocysteine's way too high. And you got all of these things that are bottlenecked. So when you look at glutathione, and you can see why it's bottlenecked, like you might have too much cysteine, and that can be because you've got too much ferritin on a blood lab. So it's biased. Let me just go back here. On the glutathione, it just biases to go down this pathway and create reactive nitrogen species. So very oxidative right there. So instead of coming down here and going into glutathione, it's coming this way. So you can start to understand how to solve this problem. Now, remember, like you can see here, that this is suboptimal glutathione, and this poor person's going to have this show up in their life. And I've spoken about this before. So you've got neuro and brain, immune and cancer, all of these issues start to arise. Now, again, this is from the NHANES data. So 51% of people are suboptimal for retinol, vitamin A, vitamin D, massive. Like we're talking 95%, vitamin E, 93%, vitamin K. And these are all huge. And look at old potassium here. Just about 100% of people are lacking in potassium. And to put that into context again, right here, it's going to bottleneck this part of your metabolism, and homocysteine is going to go up. So just that one nutrient alone can cause a lot of deleterious health effects right there. So it does sound complicated, but it's really not. And I'm going to talk about how we can solve this problem. Now, with vitamin D, it's needed to make sex hormones. And the same is true with retinol, vitamin A. They're involved in steroidogenic enzymes to produce testosterone. And another one that vitamin D targets here is dihydroepiandrosterone, which is DHEA. Now, the remarkable thing about DHEA, when you get it in the butter zone there, you know, it's a neural steroid, so it is super important. You have to balance this hormone too. So when DHEA is in the butter zone there, superior military performance, problem solving and academic performance. But what I find really fascinating is it's also going to help you with emotion. So right here on this research paper up the top there, when you've got DHEA in the butter zone there, significant increases in the positive effect scales of caring and vigor. So we all want that vigor, and significant decreases in the negative effect scales of guilt, hostility, burnout, anxiety, and stress. DHEA significantly and positively related to the affective state warm-heartedness, whereas cortisol, again, back to stress, back over here. So we've really got to start to appreciate that if you've got nutrient lack, all these metabolic pathways are screwed up and our hormones get unbalanced. And the older we get, the worse this becomes. And we're told this is normal. My friends, this isn't normal. We have to solve this problem too. So right here, and this goes back to accelerated aging again. So Dr. Rhonda Patrick's spoken about this, and this is just vitamin D. So they got 2 mice and they knocked out the vitamin D receptor in one of these mice, and 3 months later, you can see the difference in the two there. One aged beautifully, the other had accelerated aging. So vitamin D is a significant one for a lot of different health effects, including slowing down aging there. But if you have a look here, all those red dots are where vitamin D receptors are. So we're talking, every organ in our body has a vitamin D receptor. And if it's suboptimal, all of those organ systems are screwed up. So the consequences, you've got things like asthma, osteoporosis, cancer, multiple sclerosis, autoimmune disease, and so many people have this undiagnosed, hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, sun damage, neurological, it's just an absolute mess. Now, the next one to think about then, just incidentally there, 90 vitamin D, 95.4% of people are suboptimal. Now, moving on to vitamin K2. Again, people are suboptimal in this one too, about 71%, so K1, K2. Now, before I come back to this, and this is how testosterone is produced in men in the Leydig cells, I learned this from Chris Masterjohn, who's got a PhD in nutrition science. So when you get this right, it's going to give you a lot of energy. So everything you see up here, performance in exercise, sexual health, metabolic health, bone, kidney, and cancer prevention. And it's lacking in a lot of people. So it's going to boost sex hormones and also increase energy. And the reason it does that, according to Chris, for energy there, it helps the electron transport chain produce ATP, cellular energy. Now let's talk about how it boosts sex hormone production. So basically, you've got an isoform of vitamin K2 called MK4. So it's got many different isoforms of K2. So what happens is when you make testosterone, the precursor LH, and remember every 2 hours, you can actually send out pulses of LH to make testosterone. But it comes down here into this protein kinase here, and then optimal nitric oxide. And remember, when you've got high homocysteine, you don't have optimal nitric oxide. The nitric oxide pathway converges down to this other protein kinase there, and these two are MK4 dependent. So if you don't have optimal vitamin K, you're not going to have optimal energy or sex hormone production. So as you can see there, if we have nutrient lack, we are suboptimal, and that's the point. So we've got to make sure that we correct this nutrient lack. Now, another important thing to understand is I've already mentioned about methylation. So if you want optimal testosterone, detox, and everything that the liver does, have a look at this. So the liver's detoxing pollutants, contaminants, chemicals, drugs, big pharma drugs, alcohol, food additives, all of that crap. And look at the nutrients phase 1 and phase 2 requires. So we're talking about all the vitamin D, as I've just mentioned, vitamin E, vitamin A, calcium, B vitamins. You've got glutathione. So you need a lot of nutrients to make sure you can start the detox process. Then our phase 2 here, you need enough amino acids like glutamine, glycine, lysine, taurine, cysteine, methionine, all the B vitamins again, choline, which is absolutely huge. So if you don't have optimal vitamin and mineral status, liver detox slows down. The liver can get a bit diseased. So we've got to make sure that we've got that covered as well. So again, it comes down to having optimal vitamin and mineral status. And I know this sounds complicated, and I'll show you how to solve this problem. It's not too difficult. So if we got poor nutrient status, all of our hormones are out of whack, homocysteine will go up, and we feel terrible. And to make matters worse, they've also showed that a nutrient lack can cause early alopecia, which is a form of male pattern baldness there. And this is all to do with the gut microbiome. And I've spoken about how important the gut is. It's one of the foundations. So if we don't have optimal vitamin status, we're not going to have a healthy gut. It can't do the work to keep itself healthy and thriving. Now, what I've also learned from my good friend, Dr. J, he showed this to me, and I was pretty surprised because this person right here has been testing the soil or seen studies of soil testing from the 1940s to 1991. And based on that data coming from this expert, he says we need to eat approximately 2 times more meat, 3 times more fruit, and 4 to 5 times more vegetables as we did back in the 1940s. So our soil has been depleted from key vitamins and minerals. So let's start to explore where all of these vitamins and minerals are stored. Now, I'm going to play a video for you first. This is one of the first times I spoke to Dr. Ken Berry, board certified MD, and this really shook me to the core. Listen to what he's got to say about, well, I'll let him speak. Listen to this.
The untrue story that eating a slave diet is the healthiest diet for a human being. Eating a plant-based diet, that's exactly the diet that the Roman emperors fed their subjects to keep them from revolting. That they had a full belly, they didn't starve to death, but they had no motivation, they had no mental inquisitiveness or ingenuity, and so they were easy to keep down.
Yeah. So what does the system tell us the foods that we should be eating? What do they say? Well, they're telling us to eat all of these things here, and their overall density is pretty low. That's what they're telling us to eat. So sit with that for a moment. And they're telling us to avoid these foods right here. And their overall density is very high. And look at them. Can you see what they are? They're telling us not to eat those foods, so we're suboptimal, right? We don't have a lot of energy, and we decline as we age. Now, another thing to understand is I've mentioned previously that a lot of people have genetic predispositions to not being able to eat a lot of different plant foods, right? Because plants have chemicals in them. Now, one thing that I can't eat a lot of, and I've seen this play out on testing and also my blood glucose, which is dark leafy greens. I'd love to eat dark leafy greens, but I can't, and neither can my good friend, Dr. J. So listen to this. Leafy greens screw me up.
Me too, man. That's what I was just going to say. I've been wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor.
Yep.
And even when I eat just like a leafy green salad with 0 carbs, it spikes my blood sugar.
Is that inflammation?
Yeah, it's like your body's going into fight or flight. Yeah.
Yep. Holy shit. That is so important.
I know.
The same thing happens to me. Yeah.
Mark, I can, just for the experimental sake, I bought some Coca-Cola and some other bullshit stuff just to try it. I literally get more blood sugar spike from a small leafy green salad with nothing on it than I get from a can of Coca-Cola.
That's incredible. I'm exactly the same, and I've seen it play out. So when I eat these foods, they've got a lot of plant chemicals in them, which I'm sensitive to. Like my genetics is sensitive to these plant chemicals. It spikes my blood sugar. We go into a stress response because our body's just not clearing out these plant chemicals. Now, a lot of people can eat them. No problem. I can't. We're all uniquely different, and that's the point. And the problem becomes it starts to destroy your gut. And if you remember how important the gut is, you can see the deleterious effects it's going to have long term. It's not like you feel this happening. It's just as you get older, all of these health consequences show up, and that's the problem. So we'll talk about that. And let's talk about how to test for nutrient lack. So one great tool that you can use is what I help my clients work out, which is called the chronometer. I should have it linked below, but if you see here, it's you log your foods quite simply, and it will show you where you have nutrient lack. So right here, you're lacking vitamins, 60% of them, minerals, 60%, electrolytes, 36%. So you can see exactly where you're lacking vitamins and minerals. Now over here, it gives you a deeper analysis there. And these are some of the foods that I regularly eat. I'll talk about that in a moment. But as you can see here, B1, she's lacking. The other B vitamins, it's pretty optimal. And like folate was really low. So you can absolutely see where you're lacking vitamins and minerals. And that allows you to start selecting for the foods that are high in vitamins and minerals. And you can actually see it on the app itself. So that's a great tool to use. So that's going to show you how to start solving that problem. Now, another thing to understand, as I mentioned here, like I can't eat a lot of plant foods. Now, some people can. I can't. My DNA, I've looked at it. I'm sensitive to a lot of different things, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So that is vitamin and mineral status. So it takes a bit of time to work that out, but it is so worth it. Now, what I want to do now is separate two big topics. Topic number one is DNA, food issues, sensitivities, and inappropriate immune food sensitivities. So just to refresh your mind there, when your DNA, your genes do work, ultimately they make proteins. So here is a functioning protein, and here's a suboptimal protein. So it's just a little bit different. Now you can test for this. The important thing to understand here, as I mentioned before, like some people don't do too well with a lot of foods that contain ergothioneine. Okay. And mushrooms have got a lot of ergothioneine in it. So when you got the homozygous version, the TT allele there, you got a twofold increased risk for Crohn's. And again, the medical system states idiopathic. We don't know what happens. Once you know your DNA and couple that to your food sensitivities, you can solve this problem. That's the beautiful thing. So as I mentioned there, when you got too much ergothioneine building up, and this can be a supplement like lion's mane if you're sensitive, they've got the TT allele there. You'll have chronic kidney disease, preeclampsia, myocardial infarction, pressure overload, liver fibrosis, fatty liver, increased reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species, oxidative stress and inflammation, tissue injury, and it's stored in your tissues. So you can see why some carnivores it works for. Now, not everybody has this gene. We find about 10% of the people that we test, hundreds and hundreds of people we test, have this issue. So you've got DNA issues, which you can't change. So that's concept number one. Now, concept number two is you can have inappropriate food sensitivities. Now, this isn't to be mistaken with food allergies. So food allergies are tested through IgE, and that's life-threatening and can be very serious, like a peanut allergy, IgE. Now, food sensitivities, the problem with them is that they slowly start to tap you out. Your hormones become imbalanced. The older you get, the worse it becomes. And they've got a delayed inflammatory response of 1 to 3 days. And you can test for this, IgG, IgA, and a few other tests. Really simple to test. So some symptoms can be a runny nose when you're eating food, or you get lethargy, you don't feel very good. He tested a person, genetics and also food sensitivities, because he was really just struggling for about 10 years there. So they did all this testing, and I'll show you this and how to do this. It's called the functional method towards the end there. And they found that he could only eat 3 foods: chicken, beef, and bell peppers. And he was sensitive to all of this: eggs, rice, wheat, black beans, chocolate, chia, beets, artichoke, carrots, cauliflower, broccoli, garlic, onions, potatoes, sweet potato, tomato, avocado, blueberry, lemon, lime, orange, juice, lamb, and parsley there. And the reason this happens, and you can fix this, okay, I'll show you how this plays out over time. So basically, when your gut is sick, you'll have what's called gut permeability. Now, these undigested food particles, because your stomach's not working too well, your gut isn't working too well, these food particles are undigested. They're not broken down into the form that the body will accept them with. So they go through the gut and they go into the blood supply there. All right. Now, this is how it plays out. So these undigested food particles, and it can be a whole host of different things, like even carrots. The scientists call them antigens. Now, a specialized cell called a macrophage tests it out. And because it shouldn't be there, it sees it as a threat. And then your memory cells, which are called T cells, every time you eat that food, within 5 minutes, it causes this cascade to occur. So your B cells, mast cells, and histamine release, and you don't feel very good. So again, this isn't to be mistaken with DNA issues, which are permanent, and inappropriate food sensitivities. So the remarkable thing is, if you abstain from these foods and heal your gut, then you can reintroduce these foods that you're not genetically sensitive to, and you'll thrive. And you can test for this, and it's not expensive at all. So you want more information on that? Want me to do a deep dive? Drop a comment below, because this is huge. Why is it huge? Because they can cause sleep disorders. And when you're not sleeping, I'll actually show you here. So when you have sleep issues because you got not enough vitamins and minerals, or you got digestive issues because you've got these food sensitivities, but also these genetic issues, this is what happens. And this plays out over years and decades. Your testosterone comes down, and If you constantly make low testosterone, you get primary hypogonadism. So the testes literally shrink. But the problem with that is you've also got your cognition and your mood tanking, because we know how important testosterone is for vitality in men. And to make matters worse, cortisol is up. So you lose your muscle mass and your bone strength. It all goes to shit. So we've got to have good sleep. Now, I'll just play this video from the sleep scientist, and he's just speaking to the issues, because he's a sleep scientist, when you don't sleep deeply. And this is what's happened to a lot of people, because they've got these inappropriate food sensitivities because their gut's sick, and they're eating foods that they're genetically sensitive to. And the older we get, the worse this becomes. Check this out.
Not getting sufficient sleep. 70% of all the weight that you lose will come from lean muscle mass, and not fat.
Right. The body, when it's fatigued in that way, wants to hold on to those fat cells.
Exactly.
Right?
Your body becomes stingy in giving up its fat.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, when you are underslept, but you're trying to watch your diet, watch what you eat, you will lose what you wanted to keep, which is muscle, and you will gain what you wanted to lose, which is fat.
So that, my friends, isn't helpful. So these food sensitivities and genetic sensitivities crush us. And our default state becomes estrogen dominant. And the reason for that, quite simply, is this has been shown now. When cortisol's up, insulin's up, leptin triggers inflammation, your testosterone is reduced into estrogen. So you got low T and you got lots of estrogen. And this is the problem. And this is what shows up, as I mentioned there. You've got decreased energy, vitality, well-being, and motivation, diminished physical and work performance, decreased mood, feeling sad and blue, impaired cognition, increased sleepiness and fatigue, poor concentration and memory, and we don't work too well in the bedroom at all, and we lose our muscle mass, and we're told this is normal. Can you see that it's not normal? We're just eating the wrong foods already. We're relying on big food, big pharma, and big ag, and they're destroying our gut, crushing us as men, and we suffer. So I hope that's really hit home there. I just switched my video back on there. So if you got any questions, drop a comment below. Happy to answer any questions that you've got. Now, for me, I've tested out my genome to find out what my DNA doesn't like. And for me, it's organophosphates, nightshades, pesticides, plant insecticides. So I can eat plants, but I can't eat a lot of them. Gluten and gluten crossover foods, and all food additives, colors, and preservatives, because my gut is a very weak gut. So I've got to really protect my gut, and all of that destroys my gut, which destroys my health. So we've covered two big things here: big food, big ag, big pharma, big problem. And you've also got DNA issues and inappropriate food sensitivity issues. Got any questions? Drop a comment below. Happy to answer them. So let's talk about the functional method. Now, I believe in my heart, you're only as good as your team, and that's why I work with experts like Dr. J, functional doctors, clinical nutritionists, and why I did and got certified with my nutritional certificate there. So we really got to think about basically our hormones like a band playing. What kind of music do you want to sing? Do you want to get back into your prime? We have to balance our hormones. So basically, the way you want to think through this, so this is the functional method. Now, quite simply, your exposome. So your history, what's happened in your history, and also your current blood labs. Now, that's going to give you a framework. Now, I've got a PDF you can download below to show you how to do this by yourself and what the correct labs to get are and what functional ranges should be. So get you back in the optimal zone. And then you can also do your genome to find out where you're sensitive to foods that you shouldn't be eating. And then your microbiome, you can also test your microbiome to see where there is dysfunction and also inappropriate food sensitivities that's caused by this issue right here. So that's going to give you a clear path back to health. So if you want to have a conversation with me and I can show you how to do this, I've got information below to jump on a call with me. So love to speak to you and just show you how we can get you through there, back to health and pumping out the good stuff and feeling good, getting back into your prime and walking back aging, because who wants that? I mean, seriously. And it goes without saying that the system says that it's normal for men to have low testosterone. It's really not. So just to refresh your memory there, Professor Huben, listen to this.
Talked about the fact that if you really look at the data, just for instance on testosterone, there are men in their 90s, and they are not rare, it turns out, that are making as much testosterone and DHT, dihydrotestosterone, as they were in their 20s.
Yeah, so it certainly is possible. We're working with dudes that are in their 60s, and one of them had 1260 testosterone. A lot of them have 800 testosterone. You can definitely get it back. We've helped men get off TRT, so it's something that you really want to pay attention to. You can get back to health, but the functional method is a clear path specific to you to get you back to that place. And Dr. J said the exact same thing to me, and he did his PhD in hormones and cholesterol, Alzheimer's research.
As much testosterone and dihydrotestosterone as they did in their 20s.
Oh, yeah. It's true.
Yep.
It's surprising how little it goes down with age.
Yep.
If you optimize your health.
And so optimize your health, and that's the point. Now, remember, when you get this system working, you've got the gonadotropin releasing hormone system with a pulse generator. So every 2 hours, FSH, spermagenesis, LH, Leydig cells, testosterone, and that's producing a lot of free T to do work like going to the muscle to build muscle, go into the fat cells to drop body fat, to go into your brain to lower fear and anxiety and increase motivation. So we should have this system operating efficiently, and we can do that. So that whole functional method is going to show you how to get there specific for you and what foods you should be eating to get back to health there. Now, one special mention, it goes to mental stress, right? Now, the big problem with mental stress eating, emotional eating, is it destroys your gut. Listen to this. This is Dr. Rhonda Patrick just speaking about how stress hormones impact your gut. Listen carefully.
Cortical releasing hormone, which is a stress hormone, through the vagal nerve. When you release it, it goes into the gut. It activates immune cells, which then activate other proteins in the gut that chew up. They're called proteases. They chew up the gut barrier. And then you start to release more inflammatory cells, which then get in contact with bacteria, more inflammation, and then it goes back. It's like this feedback loop.
Yeah, so a lot of people are in that chronic stress. So we have to also think about, get stress out of the body, exposome, genome, microbiome, food sensitivities, get the stress out, and then we can work on the mindsets to take us to the next level. So, what you might know about negative thoughts is that you're in distress, right? So you're pumping out stress hormones, and that triggers repetitive thought, tanks cognition, systemic inflammation, as you're now seeing, and psychological stress triggers inflammation, and inflammation destroys your gut, makes you feel like shit. Now, what's really remarkable is that the brain is plastic. And if you think you're anxious, you're not. I had panic attacks, performance anxiety, social anxiety. But if you start to get the stress out of the body, you can start working on the mindsets to take it to the next level. Because it's really remarkable to think that the brain, this is what scientists have now shown with functional magnetic resonance images, the brain represents people as the sum of the mental states they experience. So if you've got a sick gut, you're stressed, you're anxious, you're depressed, and the brain, my friends, is literally rewiring to produce more of that physiology. And what's really remarkable is that if you want to make testosterone under pressure, like speak on stage or whatever it is, you've got to get in this butter zone here, and that stimulates testosterone production. So your mindset, the way you breathe, the way you look, the way you talk can increase testosterone when you get in the butter zone there. But if it's too high or too low, it inhibits testosterone production. And what little testosterone you got left, because cortisol is up, is aromatized into estrogen. Then you go into an estrogen-dominant physiology. But you can fix that problem. But the first step is getting stress out of the body. Now, if you'd like to show me how you can heal your gut, this is a step there, but this video is long enough, and that's all the steps that I've learned working with functional doctors and also when I did my certificate in nutrition there. So that's the plan there. You eliminate and protect, identify the symptoms, functional labs to find out where you're busted. You enhance digestion through gallbladder and pancreas, repair the gut with specific steps to do that. You repopulate the gut flora with the correct species. And then you eat the foods that your DNA know is real food that you're not sensitive to. And then once you heal the gut, those inappropriate food sensitivities will go and you'll feel amazing. So that's the plan. So if you want to know more about this, drop a comment below. I'm more than happy because, you know, who wants to live like this, right? And we're told this is normal. Do you believe in your heart that it's normal? I don't. I believe we must do better and we can do better. And that's the pattern: exposome, genome, microbiome, food sensitivities.